A serial killer known as the Torso Killer, already convicted of 11 homicides, admitted on Monday that he also killed 5 women on Long Island in the late 60s and early 70s. Richard Cottingham was sentenced on Monday to 25 years to life for the killing of 23-year-old Diane Cusick, who was killed in February 1968 after buying shoes at the Green Acres Mall in Nassau County. As part of a plea deal, Cottingham received immunity from prosecution for the 4 other killings. The 76-year-old prisoner attended the hearing via a video feed from a New Jersey prison. "Today is one of the most emotional days we've ever had in the Nassau County District Attorney's Office," the district attorney, Ann Donnelly, said at a news conference where she was joined by several family members of Cottingham's victims. In the case of Diane Cusick, her family has waited nearly 55 years for someone to be held accountable for her death. Donnelly said Cottingham, believed to be one of the United States' most prolific serial killers, has caused irreparable harm to so many people and so many families. "There's almost nothing I can say to give comfort to anyone." Cottingham has claimed he was responsible for up to 100 homicides. He has been imprisoned since 1980. He is known as the Torso Killer because he allegedly cut off the heads and limbs of some of his victims, authorities have said. Authorities believe Cusick left her job at a children's dance school and then stopped at the mall to buy a pair of shoes when Cottingham followed her out to her car. They believe he pretended to be a security guard or police officer, accused her of stealing, and then overpowered the 98-pound woman. Cusick's body was found on February 16, 1968. The medical examiner concluded that Cusick had been beaten in the face and head and was suffocated. She had defensive wounds on her hands, and police were able to collect DNA evidence at the scene. At the time, however, DNA testing did not exist. Cottingham's DNA was entered into a national database in 2016 when he pleaded guilty to a killing in New Jersey. In 2021, police in Nassau County began running DNA tests again on the cases involving the women and came up with a match to Cottingham. Cottingham was working as a computer programmer for a health insurance company in New York at the time of Cusick's death. The other 4 women Cottingham confessed on Monday to killing were slain in 1972 and 1973. Donnelly said that when detectives questioned Cottingham in prison, he provided information about those 4 cases that only the killer would know.
Indonesia bans sex outside marriage as parliament passes sweeping new criminal code. Indonesian lawmakers passed a sweeping new criminal code on Tuesday that criminalizes sex outside marriage, as part of a tranche of changes that critics say threaten human rights and freedoms in the Southeast Asian country. The new code, which also applies to foreign residents and tourists, bans cohabitation before marriage, apostasy, and provides punishments for insulting the president or expressing views counter to the national ideology. All have agreed to ratify the into law, said lawmaker Bambang Wuryanto, who led the parliamentary commission in charge of revising the colonial-era code. The old code belongs to Dutch heritage and is no longer relevant. The world's largest Muslim-majority nation, Indonesia has seen a rise in religious conservatism in recent years. Strict Islamic laws are already enforced in parts of the country, including the semi-autonomous Aceh province, where alcohol and gambling are banned. Public floggings also take place in the region for a range of offenses including homosexuality and adultery. A previous draft of the code was set to be passed in 2019 but was postponed after nationwide protests prompted Indonesian President Joko Widodo to intervene. In a televised address at the time, Widodo said he decided to delay the vote after seriously considering feedback from different parties who feel objections on some substantial content of the criminal code. In the lead-up to Tuesday's vote, rights groups and critics warned that the new code would disproportionately impact women and further curtail human rights and freedoms in the country of more than 270 million people. Human Rights Watch Indonesia researcher Andreas Harsono said the laws are a setback for already declining religious freedom in Indonesia, warning that non-believers could be prosecuted and jailed. The danger of oppressive laws is not that they'll be broadly applied, it's that they provide avenue for selective enforcement, he said. Under the laws, sex outside marriage carries a potential 1-year prison term, and the crime of blasphemy, already on Indonesia's books, could now lead to a 5-year prison sentence. Hadi Rahmat Purnama, from the University of Indonesia's Law Faculty, said the laws would be implemented after a transitional period of 3 years. This is a developing story.
Drone attacks oil tank at airfield inside Russia. Ukrainian drones attack air bases in Russia, 3 dead. Roman Starovoyt, the governor of the Kursk region bordering Ukraine, said on the Telegram messaging app there were no casualties from the attack and the fire was localized. Reuters was not able to immediately verify the reports. Russia's defense ministry said earlier that Ukrainian drones attacked 2 air bases at Ryazan and Saratov in south-central Russia on Monday, killing 3 servicemen and wounding 4, and damaging 2 aircraft. Ukraine did not directly claim responsibility for any of the attacks. If it was behind them, Monday's strikes would be the deepest inside Russia since Moscow invaded Ukraine on February 24. The New York Times, citing a senior Ukrainian official, said the drones involved in Monday's attacks were launched from Ukrainian territory, and at least one of the strikes was made with the help of special forces close to the base. Israeli satellite imaging company ImageSat International shared images it said showed burn marks and objects near a Tu-22M aircraft at the Dyagilevo Air Base. Russia's defense ministry said Monday's attacks were acts of terrorism intended to disable long-range aircraft, and the low-flying drones were shot down. The deaths were reported on the Ryazan base, 185 kilometers southeast of Moscow. Saratov is at least 600 kilometers from the nearest Ukrainian territory. Russian commentators said on social media that if Ukraine could strike that far inside Russia, it might also be capable of hitting Moscow. Ukrainian military analyst Serhiy Zgurets said the Air Force bases hit on Monday were the only facilities in Russia that could fully service bombers used to launch attacks on Ukraine. It is still too early to say what is at issue here, but the ability of the armed forces of Ukraine to reach military targets deep in the territory of the Russian Federation has a very symbolic and important meaning, he wrote on the Espresso TV website. There was no immediate comment from Kyiv or Moscow on the latest report of a drone attack in Kursk. Ukraine warned there would be emergency blackouts once again in several regions as it repaired damage from missile attacks it said destroyed homes and knocked out power. The strikes, which plunged parts of Ukraine back into freezing darkness with temperatures below 0 Celsius, were the latest in weeks of attacks hitting critical infrastructure. At least 4 people were killed, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, adding that most of some 70 missiles were shot down. In many regions, there will have to be emergency blackouts, he said in a late Monday video address. We will be doing everything to restore stability. Russia has been attacking Ukraine's energy infrastructure regularly since early October in what it says is a bid to degrade its military. Ukraine says such attacks are aimed at civilians and constitute war crimes. Russia denies that. The United States said it would convene a virtual meeting on Thursday with oil and gas executives to discuss how it can support Ukrainian energy infrastructure, according to a letter seen by Reuters. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Russia would fail in its current gambit of trying to, in effect, get the Ukrainian people to throw up their hands. The point is this: unless and until Russia demonstrates that it's interested in meaningful diplomacy, it can't go anywhere. If and when it does, we'll be the first to be ready to help out, he said at the Wall Street Journal CEO Council in Washington. Russia says it is waging a special military operation in Ukraine to rid it of nationalists and protect Russian-speaking communities. Ukraine and its allies accuse Russia of an unprovoked war to grab territory. Ukraine's military said on Tuesday its forces had repelled Russian attacks in or around 7 settlements in the Donetsk region, including the town of Bakhmut, over the past 24 hours. Russian soldiers were attempting to cut roads to Bakhmut from the west and northwest, Ukrainian presidential advisor Alexei Arestovich said on YouTube. Donetsk Governor Pavlo Kirilenko told Ukrainian television late on Monday that there were only about 12,000 people left in Bakhmut, from 80,000 before the war, and there was no electricity or gas. In Ukraine's southern Zaporizhia region, at least 2 people were killed and several houses destroyed by Russian missile strikes on Monday, an official in the presidential office said. Reuters video showed 2 bodies next to a damaged car in the village of Novosifivka, about 25 kilometers east of Zaporizhia city. Both of my neighbors were killed, old Troshina 62, said. They were standing by the car seeing off their son and daughter-in-law. Ukraine's Air Force said it downed over 60 of more than 70 missiles fired by Russia on Monday.